Today we're going to get to see the AMD Radeon RX 6400 from PowerColor in action inside an Optiplex 5040 small form factor. Here are the specs for both the RX 6400 and the Optiplex 5040. We're turning streamer mode on so I don't get any copyright claims. Since it's a rhythm-based game, we want Chai here to swing his metal scrap guitar trash weapon thing at the exact moment that we hit the button. So we don't want any potential latency or lag there. So let me show you what I mean. When we go into the options, we want to, I accidentally changed it to French, so désolé, that's sorry in French. Let's switch to graphics. We would think we would want to turn off vertical sync, but there is some yellow text here under frame rate limit. The developer intends to leave it locked because if the frame rate is varying too quickly, it could you could run the risk of gameplay desynchronization with the music. So we're going to leave everything on default automatic so that the game is as smooth as possible. And when you hit that button, Chai does his thing.
That's the defect? Looks suspicious.
All right, this is Hi-Fi Rush. It's holding steady to 60 frames per second, and it should because this is a rhythm game. It needs to have low latency. You don't really want to try to push this one, but it's a cel-shaded game, so we're not trying to push really tiny pixels. This is going to look beautiful even on low settings. But we're rocking medium settings today. All right, 725 frames per second on the menu screen. Love it. This is Forza Horizon 5. It ran its benchmark test and suggested low settings. But if you'll remember, with testing the A2000, it also suggested low settings. And I was able to up it to ultra settings and it ran just fine. So that's what I'm going to do here. Here it is on low settings. Just for reference, this is low settings with VSync on.
2 hours later.
It took me quite a while to manually tweak everything, but let me get out of here so I can actually drive. All right, it took me quite a while to manually tweak everything and find the best preset that I can hold true to a consistent above 60 frames per second. This is on medium settings, and we're getting about 100 frames per second on average, even when hitting a bunch of cacti and bushes. This is running really well. I've got VSync turned off, and the frame rate, of course, is unlocked and unlimited. So I'm glad this thing has a benchmark mode because I had to restart the game between every little tweak, and it took forever, but I was able to get more out of it than what the benchmark mode said. So medium settings with the RX 6400, VSync turned off, and unlimited FPS. It looks like on ultra or high settings, I get this low video memory alert and it won't even try to work. So medium settings, 100 frames per second is the best way to go. This is Halo Infinite at 1080p. By default, VSync is turned on, but with it turned on, the maximum frame rate can't go any higher than 60. So we're going to turn VSync off. That will allow us to unlock the frame rate and see how many frames we can get out of this. This is on medium settings, and with VSync off, it's holding pretty true to 60 frames per second. It's doing a pretty good job, except for when I got killed there. It felt sorry for me and dropped down to about 57 frames per second. But for the most part, I can't really tell when it drops frames. It feels pretty snappy. The only reason I would know is that I've got a frame rate counter up in the top corner. I can kind of tell though when I'm looking around really quickly that there are some lines on the screen that are artifacts due to VSync being turned off. I prefer playing with it on. I'm not trying to see how many frames per second I can get out of it, but for you all watching, we're going to see how many frames per second I can get out of it on low settings. All right, this is on low settings, and it looks like we're getting between 70 and 75 frames per second. Every once in a while dropping below 70. I'm seeing lines from VSync being turned off, but we're definitely getting significantly better FPS. And I am bad at Halo Infinite. I'm sorry, guys. Most of my experience came from the original Halo. I was the house that all my friends would come over, acquaintances, people I barely knew, and then some girls who wanted to be where all the guys were. And they would be sometimes taking more than one trip. They would bring their own Xbox into my house along with a LAN cable. That's how we used to play multiplayer. Massive multiplayer back then was with LAN cables, and we were as far away from each other as the cables would reach. And sometimes they would take a second trip to go back to their car to go get a TV so that we would have an extra TV and they could be in another room. I had a TV I was really proud of because it had component video inputs. That's where the video was separated into the red, green, and I think blue cables, and made the colors pop a little bit more and gave me that tiny little bit of an edge. Because back then with just console gaming on in Halo, that was the edge. It wasn't that you had, faster internet connection or better hardware, better FPS. It was, does your TV screen have a bigger picture or a slightly sharper picture? The best way for me to play on my monitor is to have VSync turned on, because syncing with the refresh rate of my monitor makes it a lot smoother. Just looks better, like that did. And really with frames per second that's down about just 10 to 15, it's really not that noticeable, but it makes up for it in how smooth everything looks. All right, these are the recommended settings for Wreckfest. I'm going to turn off VSync and see how many frames per second we can get out of it. These are all the setting defaults that it chose for my rig, and I would say it's on average a medium setting, even though it calls it custom. So we've got some things at medium, some at ultra, some at low, but this is just what it automatically came up with. All right, here we are in Wreckfest. I would say this is a very much underrated game. Very fun. Love the physics and how you can pretty much damage every single panel of the car. All right, it looks like we're getting an average of about 45 frames per second, but dropping way down into the 30s and 20s. So I'm going to see how I might want to tweak these settings to get better frame rate. All right, now I've got everything on low settings, and I'm still just getting like 30 to 50 frames per second. So it didn't really seem to change anything. Maybe I have to restart the game. After restarting the game, it does look like it made a little bit of a difference, but we're still dipping way down on frame rate. There is a whole lot going on the screen, but this is with low settings. It's probably averaging in the high 50s on frame rate, but it's going all over the place. All right, I turned the VSync back on because it really wasn't getting that much higher than 60 frames per second, and this is resulting in a lot smoother gameplay with no artifacts on the screen. I would recommend with the RX 6400 just keeping it on the recommended custom settings that it gives you straight out of the box. This is Tetris Effect. I love this game. I've got it on epic settings, and it's still giving me 100 frames per second. I know it's not tough on the hardware, but all the extra stuff it's doing around the actual puzzle is beautiful. The music syncs up with what you're doing. It's just a great all-around Tetris game, and the RX 6400 loves it because we're getting 100 frames per second at epic settings. All right, this is Dirt 5. We're going to turn VSync off and see what we can get out of the frame rate. Got everything set to automatic for right now, and we'll tweak it as we go. All right, on Dirt 5, everything ultra low settings. I'm getting a pretty dang high frame rate, about 95, 94 frames per second. But the game doesn't look that great on ultra low settings, so I'm going to turn that up. All right, now I have everything turned to low except global illumination quality. That's set to ultra low. We've got 90 frames per second. Whenever I turn global illumination quality up to low from ultra low, it gave me a low video memory alert and wouldn't let me play. So looks like these are the best settings that we can get right now, and we're getting about 80 frames per second. This is a little bit older game than Horizon 5, but it is very taxing on the hardware. As you can see, there's a lot of stuff going on even at low settings. To see the full and uncensored install video, just click here. My install videos are made for you to follow along. Every tool and component used in those videos is listed in the description with an Amazon link, so you can build the exact same rig yourself. And most of these install videos so far are budget builds using Dell Optiplexes and low profile cards. All the Dell Optiplexes I've used so far are small form factor. I benchmark the cards in the install videos, and then I make a separate video showing them in action in games with an overlay.